So, Mr. Tali, thank you so much for coming and doing this with me.
Thank you for having me here.
So, why is it important to talk about women rights in a corporate world?
Okay, so primarily women's rights, they are basic human rights, right? We can't deny that. And also when we talk about the right of equality, it's a fundamental right which is enshrined in the Constitution itself. We have special provisions for women under Article 15, Clause 3, but despite those constitutional mandates, women are still denied certain opportunities at the workplace. For example, there is the gender wage gap. You have the concept of the glass ceiling. You don't have equal opportunities in promotions. There are unfair and discriminatory practices regarding maternity and pregnancy. There is unfair dismissal or termination during employment, and of course there are issues regarding sexual harassment at the workplace. So because of all of these things, this is not just a violation of the constitutional rights but also a violation of the labor laws, which is why it's important to have discussions like these.
So it's 2026 we are in,
Yeah.
and still if we have to talk about women rights in a corporate world, though yes, 23% women are in the corporate and 40% are into labor, women who are doing labor, and there's only 5% in a leadership position.
Right.
So definitely I got your point that we need to talk about it. But what are the key challenges? You mentioned this, that there's a sexual harassment.
Right.
You mentioned about fair and little bit of biasness.
Right,
You mentioned this
right.
part. So let's dig into it, ma'am,
Yeah.
one by one. So when I talk about corporate world में benefits के बारे में, what are the benefits we have?
I think the two primary legislations which we can refer to when we talk about benefits is the Maternity Benefit Act of 1961, which was amended in 2017, and now it's going to be replaced by the Social Security Code. And the second is the POSH Act, which is to prevent sexual harassment against women at the workplace. The two key legislations protecting women at the workplace.
So can we start with POSH, ma'am?
Sure,
first?
sure. Yeah.
Please tell me what exactly POSH is.
So POSH is the Prevention of Sexual Harassment Act, but the full form is actually the Sexual Harassment of Women at the Workplace Prevention, Prohibition and Redressal Act, which specifically talks about sexual harassment taking place against an aggrieved woman. So it only covers women within this ambit.
It doesn't cover men.
It does not cover men. A man cannot be a victim or aggrieved when it comes to this specific law. It only protects
Even if there's
women.
a sexual harassment with the men, you cannot use POSH Act.
Yeah, POSH Act only covers an aggrieved woman as per the definitions provided in the law.
But can be the accused victim can be a woman for sure.
Yes.
You tell me that.
Yes.
Because it's a prevention of sexual harassment.
Yes.
But it can be accuser.
The accused can be any individual. It can be a man, it can be a woman, it can be anybody who is a non-binary, for example. That another key aspect of POSH is the definition of a woman. So a woman or an aggrieved woman does not necessarily have to be a permanent employee of that organization.
Okay.
So in case there is an individual who has gone for a guest lecture,
okay.
or an individual has gone for a contractual position and she faces any sexual harassment during that time, that can also fall under POSH. If she is traveling in an office bus, an office cab during the course of employment and she faces sexual harassment, that can also fall within POSH. So it gives more flexibility to understand the terms of employment, allowing more flexibility to the woman to raise her grievances.
You know, that was a great insights on POSH law. I mean, we did get information here and there, but that was quite brief about it.
Because the definition of accused has not been given there. It's only the definition of a complainant, which is an aggrieved woman. So an aggrieved woman can file a complaint to the Internal Complaints Committee as per this law.
So you talk about the committee part.
Yeah.
Can we just get a little bit of overview? What is this committee holds,
Right.
and who all can be a part of this committee? Is there anything which we are missing it out?
Right. So a complaint is made to the committee members. This complaint has to be regarding sexual harassment. So what is sexual harassment? The law defines that. Any type of physically colored remarks, any types of sexual advances, any types of pornography that is shown, or any types of conduct which is sexual in nature, which is unwelcome in nature. It can be physical, it can be non-verbal, it can be verbal. This amounts to sexual harassment. If a woman feels that she has faced sexual harassment, she has a time period of 3 months. She can file a complaint to the Internal Complaints Committee within those 3 months. Now this committee has a period of 90 days and they have to conduct an inquiry, they have to gather
so
evidences.
You have a 3 months period where you can actually inform the committee about the
Yes.
harassment part.
Yes.
And then the committee has has a period of
90 days to conduct the investigation, conduct the inquiry, call for witnesses, collect any evidences, and then they deliver their decision that whether the person who has been charged of sexual harassment, what type of punishment they should face. This committee should have at least 4 members. The presiding officer will always be a woman, a person of a senior designation in that organization. There will be 2 other members who have knowledge of the legal field or they are active in women's rights, advancing women's rights. And the 4th person, which is most important, is going to be a member from outside the organization. So they can be a member of an NGO, they can be a member with legal knowledge, they can be a member who is not related to the organization, because this is going to prevent any types of biasness in the decision-making process.
Don't mind me asking this question, but I want to know the ground reality of this committee.
Right.
Is it actually happening? And when I say ground reality, I wanted to understand there has been any false accusations also or not.
Right. So yes, every organization necessarily has to have an internal complaints committee. It can be named as different things. So educational organizations usually call it an ICC. There are, let's say, private organizations or MNCs which may have a different term for it. But there will always be a committee which is going to conduct such inquiries.
Okay.
There are chances of false allegations. Sometimes a complainant may file a false case, may raise a false complaint because of any personal grievances. But that is where again the law comes to the protection. So section 14 of the Act specifically says that if a complainant has been found to having filed false cases, then the complaint will be it will be quashed and actions or penalties will be taken against the false complaint also.
So what are today's amount of penalty, or what is this exactly?
So the penalty amount is on the employer for non-compliance. For example, if the organization refuses...
On the person who has proven himself as a victim, is there any penalty for that person also?
No. So in situations like that, again, it varies from case to case.
Okay.
So there is no written amount mandatorily. However, a complaint, if found to be false, the complainant may be asked to transfer.
Okay.
In case it is a very serious or very high degree of severity of the offence, there is a possibility their employment will be terminated. During that recourse, if it has been found that they have made the false complaint, there can also be compensation for the accused. And these same types of provisions are the other way around also. So if a complainant has filed a case, during the inquiry, during the pendency of the inquiry, they can ask for a transfer, they can ask for compensation. But the main penalty, the amount which is clearly mentioned in the law, is 50,000 rupees, which is on the organization. For example, if the employer says, I will not make an ICC or I will not follow the provisions of the law, then the penalty lies on them.
And the amount is very less.
For bigger organizations, I think yes, of course, 50,000 rupees is not much. But for smaller organizations or for startups which perhaps have lesser number of employees or which perhaps do not have such a profit, it could impact, yes.
Could impact them, yes.
But that is primarily if you are not following the provisions. Apart from that, you should be giving compensation to the woman who has faced any kinds of sexual harassment.
So do we have a job security also in those period of 90 days? Because obviously when there's an ICC committee, as you mentioned,
Right.
they're going to be involved. Senior leadership people are also involved.
Right.
Is there any job security for the complainer
So-
or the other party?
In the terms of job security, the complainant can ask for a transfer. If they feel that the inquiry process is taking perhaps too long or they haven't achieved the desired results so far, they can first approach the local complaints committee, which is an organization which is created at the district level, which is above the ICC. And secondly, they can also ask for transfer, either of their own designation or perhaps of the designation of the accused. So you have these provisions. You have options of work from home if the employer is
Comfortable
yes,
with it.
if the employer is okay with that idea. So that way you have those relaxations to ensure that the woman ultimately gets the justice that she deserves.
Now, you were mentioning about maternity benefits also.
Yes. Maternity Benefits Act is the primary legislation which talks about provision of maternity benefits to women in any establishment. But this is a more formal sector law. It does not extend to informal sector. With the Social Security Code of 2020, we are extending it more to the gig workers. The Maternity Benefit Act provides 26 weeks of paid maternity leave.
And when it starts, like for how many days or how many months or years you have to be employed?
So as per the law, you have to have mandatorily worked for 80 days in that organization.
Okay.
And then you are eligible for this.
80 days.
80
and then
days.
you're eligible for maternity benefits.
Yes, you're eligible for maternity benefits.
Which includes your gadgeted holidays, your leaves, your Sundays?
So there are a lot of Supreme Court judgments which have referred to the concept of what this duration would be. Ultimately, we have reached to the conclusion that includes the entire duration. That includes your Sundays, that includes your holidays, that includes your off days as well.
That
Everything.
includes it.
That includes.
Let's say if an employer is there getting a salary
Yes.
and you're there for 80 days,
Yes.
you're eligible for maternity benefits.
Yes.
Got it.
Yes. In 2017, this law was amended. Initially, we used to only have 12 weeks of paid leave. 2017 was remarkable in the amendment because we now have crèche facilities, we have the option of nursing breaks, we have the options of employment from home or work from home
So
provisions.
these comes under maternity act.
All of these
You
come
do have
under
an option of nursing breaks also.
Yes. Now the employer must provide the woman who returns back to work with 4 nursing breaks per day. And if the organization has over 50 employees, then they should also have a crèche facility.
Okay.
And there are 4 visits to the crèche which are allowed to the woman.
Okay.
Uh,
4 nursing break, 4 visits.
Yes, 4 nursing breaks are separate, 4 crèche visits are separate.
Okay.
Yes, and with the 2017 amendment, you also have the provision of leaves for women who have adopted a child. So originally, when a woman adopted a child, she was not entitled to maternity benefits, but now she can take up to 12 weeks of paid maternity leave.
If you have done an adoption.
Yes, as
And
long as
will you be getting the same benefits as the other woman who's a biological mother, like
This-
nursing breaks or anything like that?
no, this specifically only talks about the adopting woman.
Okay.
So the biological woman would be eligible.
Biological mother?
Yes, the biological mother would be eligible for maternity benefits as per her organization. But if a woman has adopted a child, then she is allowed to 12 weeks of maternity leave. And in case a woman is a part of the surrogacy arrangements, then also the commissioning woman is allowed for 12 weeks of maternity leave.
Okay.
So these are amendments which were introduced in 2017. Before that, we did not have these options.
So when you talk about maternity benefits, I talk about the paid leaves also,
Yes.
right? We did mention that. So is there anything which we are missing in that? Like you are eligible for the entire amount, the entire salary, or there's some basic salary, there's some deductions, or there's any...
No, you're
eligibility?
entitled to the entire wages of 26 weeks.
Is it being followed?
Not entirely. So the biggest problem that, in my opinion, that women continue to face is that there is non-compliance because of less penalties. For example, if an employer fails to provide these provisions, then they have to pay from 2,000 to 5,000 rupees as a penalty, which is a very, very less penalty for a woman who has faced these grievances. Apart from that, there is also discrimination regarding pregnancy. If a woman has chosen to embrace motherhood or she has returned back from
There was a
maternity
terminology
leave.
also. I remember we talked about it. There's a
Yes, so the
terminology.
term is called motherhood penalty, which
Yeah.
essentially says that women have to choose their identity as a mother or choose their identity as a co-worker, and ultimately they are faced with a penalty because their career is not progressing as rapidly, their work X is not counted with their maternity break. So all of those issues arise. Men, on the other hand, they get so sort of a premium for this, and it's called the fatherhood premium. So those terms are very common.
And there's one more thing. There's called unbiased recruitment is not there. There's this word doesn't even exist, because if a woman is having a nursing breaks or a woman
Right.
has having a crutch breaks, then they're not considered as very eligible for the leadership positions.
I think ultimately all of this leads down to that glass ceiling effect, that
Yeah.
since women are not given that opportunity with better projects, they are not given the same types of opportunities to be promoted to higher positions. Ultimately, they face the glass ceiling, which is they're not employed in any types of leadership positions.
And that's the reason the ratio lands up that only 5% women are there in the leadership positions.
yes.
In India, I'm talking about. That's a survey says.
Yes.
But we have a huge workforce around us, which has to be changed.
Yes.
So I wanted to know, ma'am, what changes we can do. I mean, as in, let's say if I talk about if I'm in a leadership position, what are my key responsibilities?
I think first of all, it's very important to have DEI initiatives, which is diversity, equity, and inclusion, where you're recognizing that not just women, in fact, all genders, all races should be given the same types of opportunities. And an individual's identity should not limit her from those types of opportunities. She should be given the same platform. So DEI initiatives, DEI workshops become very important. Secondly, the concept of accountability. If you have penalties, if you have provisions which are not being complied with, or penalties as minimum as rupees 2,000, that would have no effect on an organization. Perhaps increasing the accountability where the leadership, the employer, the organization is also held accountable for non-compliance. Stricter compliance would ultimately lead to more benefit for the women. And this is also supported by awareness campaigns, having discussions, having discourse, having gender sensitivity and sensitization projects or sensitization workshops is mandatory. We were talking about the POSH. So the ICC is supposed to conduct gender sensitization workshops in organizations. And every year they're supposed to give a report to the local complaints committee about how many such events they have conducted. So having those platforms where you allow for discussions, that's important. And since we're talking about ICC also, I think confidentiality becomes very important. Sometimes women feel that we cannot share our grievances because it might impact our employment, it might impact how we are working.
Judge.
Exactly.
People might frown upon that. Why you? I was studying this case while going through my research for this topic. That people don't complain because they're afraid about their image.
Exactly.
They might be people thinking, why you?
Right.
Why people have chosen you?
Right.
Why he or she has said something to you only. But that's something people frowned upon.
Yes, so women are often afraid to go to an ICC for sexual harassment, or they're afraid to approach their HR if they don't get maternity benefits because they're too concerned about their job security, as you were talking about. But I think we should have more strict enforcement mechanisms so that women do not feel afraid to raise their voices when they have been denied justice or when they have been denied their legal provisions.
I'm happy that women have been in this situation that they're breaking the glass ceilings, which you mentioned twice.
Right.
But still a lot more things to do. So you answered this one question that what as a manager you mentioned this terminology.
Right. DEI.
DEI. I love this terminology and I'm definitely going to write it down.
Right.
DEI. I want to do the role of an organization again in this thing, ma'am. Can we do something more? Which other people are, because obviously you mentioned the DEI part, you mentioned this
DEI.
DEI.
Right,
I'm so sorry.
right.
DEI.
Yeah.
So, and I'm going to write it down. But is there anything more we can do as a society also?
I think so. When you talk about women's rights or advancing them, there are different stakeholders involved. For an organization, it's important for them to ensure stricter compliance. It's important for them to conduct such awareness programs or have such workshops. When we talk about the role of a woman, I think it's important for her to be aware about her rights. In case somebody is denying you your benefits, you can always approach the National Commission for Women. You can approach the High Courts or the Supreme Courts if the offender or the employer is a public entity. It falls within the definition of the state. So women should be more aware about their rights, and that awareness is possible through education and discussion. If I get to know something today, a new right, then it's my responsibility to go back home and tell the other women around me.
Yeah, true.
As a society or as an institution, I think it's important for us to allow that platform.
Actually, this is something you should be free to talk about.
Yes. You can't restrict women from engaging in this kind of discussion, right? You should be open to them having this type of a discourse. You should be open to them exploring these opportunities. There are a lot of initiatives now which have also been started by the government of India where individuals can enroll themselves as POSH trainers. So the benefit of that is that you become aware about the legal mandates, and then you can also start training other people and spreading that awareness. So a POSH trainer can then be an external member of the ICC for any organization, and they can also conduct these training workshops. So if more women are involved in
these... Is a paid one?
So it depends on the organization offering them. The Government of India has a very small online workshop, which is not a paid one, but different organizations depending...
Is there any limitation that only these people can be a member of POSH?
No, again, that depends on the organization offering that workshop. So that varies from employer to employer or organization to organization. But the benefit of that is you're giving women a platform to explore these opportunities and then further, engage in that discourse and discussion to ensure that this awareness continues to spread.
Ms. Valva, thank you so much for all those insights. I've covered all my questions. I have not many questions regarding this POSH, women benefits in corporate world specifically. Anything which we can talk about the labor force part?
So I think a limitation that currently exists in the current way that the legal rights have been framed is that not most of them extend to the informal sector, right? So the wage workers, your contractual workers, but we have the Supreme Court for that. So Supreme Court, for example, in many cases has said that even if you are an ad hoc worker or you are employed on a contractual basis, you will still be eligible for maternity benefits.
Okay.
Or you now have the Social Security Code of 2020, which also extends to gig workers and small scale economies.
Okay.
So that way we are progressing in the right direction. I think individually also, if I was to employ somebody in the informal sector in my own domain, then it would be my responsibility to ensure that I also, extend those same rights to them, whether or not I am the establishment within the definition of law.
If I'm expecting something, I should be delivering the same thing too.
Yes, right.
Again, ma'am, thank you so much. I'm really happy doing this thing. And if you have any questions, any queries, please write down in the comment section.